everyone, to Divorced, Beheaded, Thrived. This is a podcast with me, Sophie Brown.
And me, Adrian Sanderson, and today we are joined by Lewis Raymond Taylor, who is the Psychopath Life Coach.
That's the first time I've actually been called that as a label, because obviously that's the name of the documentary. But of course, people are going to know me as that now forever, aren't they?
Is that not something that you previously sort of have been?
No. I mean, it's the name of the documentary, but am I the Psychopath Life Coach? I will be now, yeah, for sure.
Well, do you know, I expected, because of the name, I actually expected that it was going to be you being a life coach for psychopaths. And
Right.
that's what it was going to be about. Before I'd seen anything of it, that was my expectation, that you were sort of going to go into prisons, maybe. That was my first guess of not knowing anything. You were going to be a life coach for psychopaths.
And I think a lot of other people would have also thought I was a life coach and then ended up like murdering somebody or something, but it was something a little bit in between.
I mean, I think having that nuance of not really knowing probably draws you in as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But to give a bit of background, guys, so we met Lewis the other day. We were invited down to watch his new documentary, which is like a feature-length, hour-and-a-half Netflix documentary about not only his history, but the future of his business. And honestly, it was an absolute roller coaster of a program. I watched the trailer and I thought that would just be the highlights, because what was in that was crazy. But honestly, it was, it was amazing to watch. But just to give like a little encompassing, it comes out on Wednesday. But what's kind of like the top line? How would you describe what it is, what it's about?
Cool, it's an interesting one. Well, it's ultimately about my journey from someone who experienced a lot of trauma, done a lot of bad things in my life, and at one point was labelled, with not just labelled, but given a diagnosis of an antisocial personality disorder, which is a psychopath. And for a while, I, lived that identity and did things psychopaths would do, although I didn't quite go as far as becoming a serial killer. I wasn't far behind. Lots of violence, lots of crime, drug dealing, lots of addiction, and some very chaotic moments, as you would have seen from the footage that I managed to somehow keep, which was perfect, obviously, for the documentary. So you get to see it in real life, because I've told my story on podcasts, and I think I've even had people in the comments going, "This guy is just making all this up," and I think, okay, well, you wait until you see the video. So
guys, there's video evidence of everything, which is.
And it was funny as well. So I invited a couple of old. Go on, mate.
I thought it was surprising how much video evidence you put in there. I was like, wow, like this is a ballsy move. Like, there's no, what's the word? Like no covering anything. It's all on show.
Well,
I had a thought where I thought, well, what if he is still covering things? It's not all on show. How bad is the reality of it?
Well, that's the funny thing, actually, because there was a couple of my friends from back in the day that came, actually. I haven't knocked around with them for obviously 10 years because I've been evolving and creating new social circles. But a couple of old school friends that I used to, sell drugs with and all sorts, came to support. And a few people after it, during the networking, were talking to them, and they were saying, "Oh, are you one of Lewis's life coaches?" And they were like, "No, we used to sell drugs for him back in the day." And they were like, "Oh, is it? What's he like?" And they were like, "That documentary is absolutely nothing. He was a lot fucking worse than that." So to be honest, I mean, how much can I really put in a documentary in an hour and a half? But I was pretty bad.
Gosh,
yeah, and you can see that. I think the all-encompassing of the documentary would just be how much you can be in one direction and how far you can actually turn it around. So now you have a 25 million business, you're doing successfully, you have a wife, you now have a baby as well. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
How do you find fatherhood?
God, that needs an hour podcast episode on its own. I mean, it's... I don't know if it's different for, potential psychopath. I'll leave people to decide whether I am or not on that front, but definitely have those traits. But I think it's a gradual bonding process, I think, for me. I mean, I didn't get this immediate, my wife is absolutely obsessed with him, and I don't find myself feeling like that. but I love him and he's cute and he's amazing, and but I don't know. There may be something different. I'm thinking there may be something different. Yeah.
Okay.
That's all I can say. Because I can't compare me to anybody else because all I know is me. It's difficult. I don't know what another person would feel or experience in that moment.
Do you know, this is
is this normal or is this not? I don't know. It's quite common for me to ask myself those questions, by the way, though. I'm always thinking, is this me or is this what most people are like,
So this actually brings me up to like a personal experience of mine. So I would say that I was in a relationship with, there's been no diagnosis, but I would say, sociopath, narcissist, potentially a psychopath. I would say that I was in a relationship with this one man. And, his level of empathy would cut off for anyone. Couldn't care less. That was it. The only time there was empathy there or, consideration, kindness came when there was an opportunity for that kindness, emotion to be visible to the outside world. So if there was no one to see him be kind, he wouldn't be kind. He would probably be the entire opposite until those children of his were in the room. And that was it. And those children, he was obsessed with the children, and it became an interesting relationship for me to watch, to sort of see how unbelievably different he can treat his children compared to anyone else, who essentially any other person on the planet is dirt. And that's exactly how it was. And it was just a really interesting sort of scenario. It was a very interesting relationship to be in, as much as a damaging one for me personally. It was, it was very interesting to sort of watch and psychologically sit back and view this man and go, right, like, what's going to happen here? What's going to be your life? I worried at times. I thought, is this going to be so violent that you'll end up in prison one day and you won't be returning? It was a crazy relationship to watch.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because, everybody's on the spectrum, technically. You're either going to be an empath where you absorb other people's emotions and you're consumed by everything to the point where you can't even function, or you're going to be a psychopath to the point where you could just, kill a baby and not even blink. Everyone's on that spectrum, but not everybody necessarily. People can show those traits but still not be psychopathic. They may have some kind of trauma, or they may even just be overcompensating for something. You'll find that a lot of arrogant people are actually overcompensating for something. They're being rude because maybe they don't feel good about themselves in some way, and being horrible to other people makes them feel better. They say hurt people, or they might feel very insecure. So by belittling other people, they feel bigger. So there's all sorts of things that can be at play that might not necessarily be, a personality disorder. And I think that we're all so complex, and we've all had so many things happen in our life that it's very difficult to say, where this comes from. Is it genetic? Is it trauma? Is it overcompensation? Is it a deep mindset issue? Is it, so, but we all have something there. None of us are perfect, and sometimes it can be a complex web of different issues that manifest itself. So yeah, I think we can all have a story of how we've either come into contact with somebody like that, or have even noticed it in ourselves at some point in our lives, for sure.
Yeah, I suppose there's a lot of people as well that, like Adrian with your partner, like they'll never probably be diagnosed with anything, and they'll just live their life with these traits. Not many people get diagnosed, I would imagine, with this anyway, because to get to that point, it must be quite extreme. You were very young when you were diagnosed. Do you think you were already sort of heading in a direction anyway, or do you think that was the moment where you were like, right, fuck it, I give up, this is just going to be my life, and I'm going to lean into kind of, this is my personality and these traits? Do you think it triggered something inside of you?
Yeah, I don't think it was that. Personally, at the time when I got that diagnosis, I didn't really think anything of it. I just thought, this is a goody two-shoes who has seen me do loads of bad things, and he obviously doesn't do bad things, and he must assume I'm mental, but actually I'm just a bit of a bad lad. But it was more a case of, I was constantly being reinforced by everybody in my life that I was bad. Not necessarily a psychopath, that I was bad. My dad would tell me I was bad and naughty. Teachers would. The council would. When I got my ASBO, I was expelled from school. I was put in a young offenders institution. I was And it's all these different people all pointing to the same conclusion of Lewis is a naughty, bad kid. And there's only so many times you can hear that before you go, well, okay, that is actually who I am.
It's like a
What other perspective do I
self-prophecy.
have? Yeah, and you look to the people who are the authority figures in your life, and the people that you look up to support and love you, and you trust them. That's why people follow what their parents tell them to do for the large part,
Yeah.
because they trust them and they assume that what they say is right. And if your own dad is saying you're a buffoon and you're stupid and you're bad and you never amount to anything, then I don't really know how I would think or feel anything else.
Yeah. So would you say that your environment growing up then actually was a very large factor in the sort of choices that you made? Yeah, which is
Of course.
so I sort of grew up in a similar environment to you, not the family situation, but the general consensus of environment. And then I went to drama school for my degree, which is like 50 grand a term. Like I could never have gone if I hadn't won a scholarship there. So I'm suddenly surrounded then by all of these essentially really rich people, and they're telling me about their life and their environments. And it was my first time being exposed to that sort of thing. And I was like, gosh, like, imagine if I had that. Like, I don't know how I got here, considering what I had. Our teachers would be like, you'll be lucky if you're a hairdresser. You'll be lucky if, you might work in the factory down the road. And that was the best sort of opportunity that we were told that we would ever get. And I just thought it was, I always think the environment that you grew up in is a crazy, crazy thing.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know if you've heard, I'm sure you have, about beliefs, but beliefs are essentially strongly held opinions, but we treat them as facts. And from a young age, we're just absorbing information and using it to understand how the world works and who we are and how we sit in it. And the more of that information we get, the more of an understanding we get of how the world works and who we are. And if we're constantly being fed that, not just from negative experiences, but just from general experience, and that creates our perspective of life and our reality, and we can't see out of it because there is no other information. And if you're from a small town and you're talking about the bakery, and the self-perceived authority figures are telling you that this is all there is to life, then how can you see out of that? There's nothing else to see, and there's no other perspective to try and understand life from. It's not until nowadays where we have the luxury of social media and podcasts like this where we can actually communicate to people that have never had the opportunity to be communicated to. Usually it's like you knock into someone when you're buying your loaf and your milk, from the shop, and oh, how's Terry doing? Oh, he's got a job, and that's what you're basing your entire existence off. But now we have an opportunity to share a deeper message for us to understand ourselves way better, and yeah.
So I've got another one that's like niggling at me. So I thought this when I was watching the documentary. So let's go back to you being what 21, something like that. Like maybe the time you were in Ibiza, so you're going traveling, you're wild at this point, and you said that you would sometimes just be looking for trouble, like you would sort of grinding your teeth. I think it was in the episode, and saying, I'm out there, I'm looking for a problem. How have you been able to move yourself away from those, what at the time sounded like natural tendencies? How have you been able to grow past those now to not be very easily triggered and want to, just jab someone who you don't like?
Well, got it. Yeah. So I don't have a natural tendency to be violent, and I don't think that any psychopaths. Well, no, there's definitely some that do. I think serial killers and stuff, of course. I think there's a combination. There's more to it going on than just I'm a psychopath, I want to become a serial killer. But psychopathy is more just a lower range of emotions. So they're more prone to be able to be violent, and they're less restricted by the things that would stop people from being violent, So but the honest truth is that's not why I was violent. The reason why I was violent is during my therapy sessions, I identified, I was sitting in a counseling session one day, and it was a one-to-one session. This lady was talking about my dad, and I started choking up. And I didn't cry. I don't cry. And I started choking up. And it was. Have you ever seen the film Good Will Hunting? It's very similar to that film, where I was choking up. She was still asking questions, and I literally went, "Don't," because I was scared of what was going to come out. Like, "Don't go there." And she goes, "It's okay." She went, "It's okay." I went, "Don't." And she went, "It's okay. It's safe." And I went, "Why was he so horrible to me?" And I just blurted it out. And then it made me realise that the reason I was so angry is because like I was angry at my dad, and I was angry for the way he treated me, and I was internalising that to be about me, and I was angry at the world. So I think it was an outlet for me. Plus also, psychopathy. If I've got it, who the hell knows? The only emotion we actually can display is rage. So, as an outlet, there's this combination of things. There's this anger towards myself. There's this anger towards my dad. My dad's now dead, so I can't get angry at him anymore. So now, who else can I take it out on? There's this tendency to be violent, and this the emotional constraints that most people live by that stop them from being violent are not there. And I could do it now. Like I wouldn't do it, and I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to harm people. But say, for example, because there's loads of them that are in the military or that go to war. If a terrorist walked through the door now and I had a gun in my hand, I could shoot every one of them, and it would not faze me in the slightest. And I would I'd never think about it again because I'd be doing the right thing, and logically it makes sense. So it's still there, but the trauma response that I had before, which was causing me to symptomatically react in scenarios which weren't appropriate, that were negative and unnecessary, were more prevalent back then than they are now.
Yeah. So would you say that you've had to do any specific work in order to sort of train those reactions to slow down, take them out? I mean, I know I've had to do that in the past 100%.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, to be fair with you, I wouldn't say I'm 100% cured. There's sometimes where I can look at people and my fist clenches, and I think, "Whoa, hang on," So this is. I feel I sometimes describe it as I'm walking on the opposite side of a conveyor belt. I've got to work twice as hard as everybody else to live a normal life because I could easily just stop and then just go straight back to where I was. So I'm not fixed, but absolutely I've done a lot of work, not on just anger management, because anger management is a symptom. I've had to work on myself. I've had to learn to, I would say love myself is a little bit strong because I'm not quite there yet, but I've had to accept myself, and I've had to accept what's happened to me, and I've had to understand it on a level where I don't feel so angry. And because I was angry and I didn't understand it, that's dangerous. If you're angry and you don't understand it, then you don't know who to take it out on, and you don't know why. You're just reacting. Yeah. There's a difference between reacting and responding. Someone can trigger me now, and I can go, "You're belittling me. You're reminding me of how my dad used to treat me, and I know that's my problem. So it's all good." But before, I'd have fucking headbutted him. So it's reacting and responding is a different thing.
That makes a lot of sense to me personally in my life and the things I've had to deal with. I've never butted anyone. It's just not in me. But this bad boy, this weapon, and I've spent years. Yeah, like I'd be the one that would worry my friends. Like he's the one who's going to cause the problems, and I would. I couldn't help myself. I'd be like, "What? Dickhead!" Like fucking immediately, I'd hate everyone. When you say, the not understanding your anger, 100%, that rings very true to me.
Have you spoken to other diagnosed psychopaths? I say that in terms.
No, it's not we don't have a support group that we go into once a week, but actually 80% of the prison population have personality disorders, which is why they're in there, and they don't get the help, and they don't understand that they're going through this, and a lot of it is still choice. There's no blaming it. You can't say, I've got an antisocial personality disorder, so I can, I should be able to beat people up. You always have choice, but it is a little bit more difficult. And like it says in the documentary, punishment doesn't work. Yeah. Punishment doesn't work with people with personality disorders because we just don't learn from it or care, or we don't. I'm saying we. I've got to be careful because I need to understand if I'm going to actually adopt that label. Because I'm still on the fence myself because it is a label, and I've got to decide whether or not that is. If I'm am I complex enough to be able to say that this is me? But anyway, let's just say I am one, which I do score and I have been diagnosed. So in terms of clinically, we can't blame the way that we are for those things. But it does make things more difficult, and it is more of a challenge to get through life, and we don't learn from punishment. There's no society, and authority is in a complete illusion for us. Like, I don't see any hierarchy or structure of anything. It's just me doing what I want, and it's freeing, and it helps because it allows me to put myself in whatever position I want, because that's what everyone wants to do, but they're unable to see it like that. They see themselves as the bottom of the pyramid that could never climb to the top. But for me, I don't see a pyramid, and I don't see anybody in my way, and I don't care what the law says or what the politics said or the news say. And that's the problem with us and punishment. The only reason why it's occupational hazard. We go to prison because we get caught, but we're not going, oh God, I've been bad. I'm not going to do that again because they're going to be really disappointed. It's just, shit, they got me again. But it doesn't work. So, I've been around a lot of psychopaths, I guess, because there's a lot of them in prison. And do you know what? There's a lot of them that are really nice guys. The absolute best psychopaths, and best isn't probably the right word, but the strongest psychopaths, you will never, ever know that they're psychopaths. They will be the nicest people you've ever met. They will even cry when you tell them a story because they're so good at mirroring emotion and acting. So anyway, there was actually 2 convicted murderers at the movie premiere. Walking around, drinking, right in your vicinity, and lovely guys, and you never would have known.
That's like my upbringing, though. Like, I know murderers, I know criminals, I've known them all my life, and it's just not a thing to me. Like, I know that person, so I've known them 30 years. It's just not, it's odd, isn't it? Because someone else might react one way, and I just go, oh, well, is what it is. But they've paid their dues in whatever way.
Both of them have done over 20 years in jail, and now they're at a movie premiere. They've not been out long, to be fair.
Wow. I mean, there's a lot to say for like reformation as well. Obviously, a lot of people will spend that time in there and almost completely change themselves and come out and be ready to re-enter the world. It's not worrying being in their presence, because I feel like otherwise prison wouldn't work for anyone. Like, you can't just assume that everybody's going to come out and be a problem, because that's part of the problem.
To be fair, when I say punishment doesn't work, I think when you do 20 years behind the door, I think it probably works. I don't think you're going to want to repeat that one. Like, one particular guy went in from the age of 20 to 40. Gosh. And that's the big part of your life. You're not going to want to go and do another one from 40 to 60. Like, that's your lot. You're done now. So that's enough to, I think, punish anyone.
How long did you spend overall in facilities?
Only a few years overall. Different times, young offenders institutions, a few different crimes. The last one was the most serious, which was GBH, for 18 months. That was when I hit the guy in the taxi queue.
Yeah.
But you get out on, they say good behaviour, but it actually doesn't exist. You just do half, and then the other half is probation. So I don't know why they call it out. I think that might be an American term, get out on good behaviour. Because you never, ever, even if you was to stab someone in prison, you get out after half your sentence. I don't know why they call it that. Yeah. And then the other half is in probation. But if you breach your probation, you go back inside, which I've done before. So what the good behaviour is we'll let you out. And if you are on good behaviour, then you can stay out. But the moment you do anything, and even like come back 5 minutes late off your curfew or whatever because you're on tag or whatever, then you go back in. So that's kind of how that works.
When you had hit the guy in the taxi queue, that was quite a moment for me while watching it, because I was waiting to see what you were going to say. And I was almost relieved for the honesty when you then say, the only reason I missed you is because there's a fucking camera there. Otherwise, he's got no chance. I believe you said bang to rights. I was bang to rights. So therefore, you put your jacket in for him and tried to help him. That's an interesting scenario, isn't it? And, I absolutely commend you. I don't think the majority of people would have been as honest there.
Yeah. It was the truth. what's the point in trying to lie, especially when the documentary is what it's about? It wouldn't make sense if I was like, oh my God, I was wrecked with guilt. It was the worst thing I've ever done. It was so sad. It was like, hang on a minute, I thought you were supposed to be a psychopath. Make your mind up. So the truth is, I just don't understand what a normal, if I am a psychopath, well, this is not even called a psychopath. I'm me. I don't really understand the differences between me and someone who isn't like me. And I don't know how they would respond in that situation. I just know how I would. And for me, there's not much going on. I do experience emotion, by the way. I'm not completely emotionless, but it has to be extreme, very extreme. And then even then it's a flicker. So it's just very light. And also it can also work sort of counterintuitively to the point where, like I said, I might have even felt just. There's a part of me that sometimes can not just not show empathy, but feel like I should have done it. That's the real truth. Like, don't shout on my face because this is what's going to happen. That's kind of the mindset I had back then. It's very different now. Very different now. And I would feel entirely different about it now, or at least think about it differently now. But back then, if you shout in my face and you grab me by the scruff of the neck and you get hurt, I'm sorry, mate, but that's your fault. That's kind of the mentality I had. So how can I say I have empathy for that? That happens, 100 times a night, every night in every city across the world.
I'd imagine, though, that a lot of people maybe would agree with you in that scenario, actually. I don't think, from what it sounded on the TV show, I don't think it sounded like you intended on him banging his head so badly.
No.
You were just responding to it, but then obviously smack, that slow release of blood. It's not a good sign. Yeah. And then suddenly you've got to start thinking. I actually think it's really, as someone who I've focused on this sort of thing for a big portion of my life, and did research, and not crazy amounts, but I did enough. And you saying, a lower level of emotional sort of capability, that's not a way that I've thought about it before. And actually, I think that that's really interesting, which would then, you said earlier about, will I be taking on this psychopath? Am I now a psychopath? Will you be taking that on? I think it's an interesting way to go. But if there is such thing as a psychopath, no one will ever know. Like your wife said, it's not a perfect science. But if it is, would you say that maybe that is then just a mental struggle, just like somebody else who maybe has bipolar or something like that? So therefore, actually, does this deserve medical attention? Does this deserve time, even though that there might be violent or difficult tendencies that come with being a psychopath due to those lack of emotions? Is it something that even the government should be looking into to go, well, we need to put something into the NHS for this?
Well, I think they do, but there's not much you can do. There's no cure for it, which is the problem. There's no medication, there's no nothing. That's the problem. But there is a certain element of help that they do try and provide. But it absolutely should be deemed in society's eyes as a condition, because it is a condition. It's a disorder. It's a personality disorder, and there's many of them. And say, for example, you had bipolar and you had a manic episode and you went and started, going crazy, and you hit someone in the face, and then you got sectioned and then you recovered. No one would be judging you for that, because they'd be thinking, wow, you've just gone through this really difficult bipolar, a manic episode, right? But for someone who's a psychopath, just because the stigmatizing label that's associated to it, they just think evil, serial killer, wants to hurt people. But that is just a complete misconception. Like, I don't want to hurt anybody. I have no murderous thoughts. That's nothing. That's not in my. I mean, I like watching a true crime documentary. It's about as far as it goes. But that's just such a small percentage of psychopaths. It's like we said, it's 1% of the population. Do you know how many people that is? I mean, if you do the math on it, it's a lot of people. Every room you're in, there's going to be one there. Every tube that you take on the train, there's one in there. And that doesn't mean to say they're going to go and kill someone, or they even want to kill somebody, or if they want to harm someone, or even want to be horrible to someone. It just means they have a different genetic makeup that, like I said, gives them a lower emotional capacity. It just so happens that some of these people do end up also having violent tendencies, and that's the ones that we bring the awareness to, because they're these captivating stories, and it creates a stigma, and it's not spoken about enough. So I'm really hoping this documentary sheds light on the neurodivergent side of things, so people can actually start to put their hands up and say, actually, do you know what, I'm one as well. But and actually be able to sort of come out the closet, as it were, and not have to, suppress themselves, and also be able to understand themselves, and actually be able to thrive as well. Because I talk a lot about turning adversity into an asset.
Yeah.
These skills, they're skills. That's what I just said. These skills, these aren't negative traits. These skills. I mean, not all of them are. Given the right moment, maybe, but like for the large part, I thrive in business because of it. And
you said this the other
people
day,
can't get their head around it.
Yeah, when we walked out the other day, Sophie was like, supposedly, like, the top business in the world are all linked with psychopathy.
Of course, if they can just sack fucking 300,000 employees just because it makes them an extra, a couple of million a year, they're psychopaths, because otherwise they'd be thinking about, well, how their kid's going to eat. So yeah, I mean, it gives you some advantages with making decisions. You're less, there's no fear. When people go, I'm going to launch this thing, I'm going to what about what people are going to say? All that fear. There's so many different things: self-doubt, judgment, criticism, hate. I mean, the documentary I've just put out about myself, I mean, the backlash that's going to come back from that, it'd be people's worst fucking nightmare, right? Wouldn't it? Like, what are people going to say? They're going to think this, they're going to get that. People are going to shout on the street and call this. It's just not there for me, So all that is out the way, and I can just use it as platforms and, leverage and, share a message and keep on doing what I'm doing. So, yeah, there are skills that come with it, but until you understand what they are and are able to harness them and channel them, then you're just going to end up back in jail.
Yeah, well, not exactly. Not everyone can do that. I mean, moving forward in the story slightly, you obviously did make that change. I mean, you're sat here today on this podcast. You just had a Netflix documentary come out, and you've done this incredible thing and built a £25 million business, which is your coaching master's business. But what moment changed for you? What made you go, right, this is not happening anymore, and I'm gonna change my path forever?
It was interesting. I didn't actually put that part in the documentary just because it was too long to get everything in. There's lots to my story. I'm writing a book, by the way, so you can get the full details coming up in summer. But it was actually the day I was sentenced to prison. I rang up. I can never remember who it was, whether it was my mum or my friend. But I rang up someone and I said, "What are people saying about me on social media?" Because that was what used to feed me. I almost wanted people to be saying, "Oh, Lewis has been locked up." I like that. It's weird, What are people saying? And they said, "Oh, your friends post." They said, "Oh, you're on the front page of the paper. Violent and boorish." It came up. I think it was it was even in the documentary. Boorish means a pig, by the way. So I was referred to as a pig. That was lovely. Didn't care though. Couldn't care less. Anyway, and then, but there was two pictures that my friend had posted. One of me outside the courtroom, St Albans Crown Court, and one outside St Albans Crown Court 7 years later, but with a caption above it, "Nothing changes." And it was that moment where I kind of thought, it just hit home that nothing had changed. Like I was actually outside the same courtroom in the same suit and doing the same things over and over again, expecting a different result. And I realized that because there was always something inside me that knew that I had a lot to give, and that I wasn't this buffoon that my dad said that I was. There's this conflict where I knew I had something special, but also was clouded by all those voices of my dad saying, "You're stupid, you never amount to anything," which just created this barrier of not allowing me to release it. But anyway, but when he said that, I thought, you're fucking right. Nothing has changed. And then I thought, you know what? I can't keep doing this. I can't keep blaming everything and everyone around me for why my life is so difficult. And I need to take responsibility. And I just looked at myself in a mirror. And you see in the documentary, but there was actually it's not a very good representation of the documentary, but it's in prison, you don't get mirrors, you get a slab of metal where you can just about see your reflection. And they're usually scratched as well, because prisoners are such arseholes. They're like, "Oh, I'm not going to let the next person in this cell see their face." Like that's how psychopathic these fuckers are. They're like, "This next person's not going to see themselves for months." Anyway, so I'm looking at this scratched off piece of metal, and I can just about see my face. And somehow must be these traits that I have, the assertive decision making in me. I just I'm going to change myself. Because I'd tried to make changes in my life before, but I'd never looked at myself. I'd never realized I was the problem. And then when he said nothing changes, I kind of realized I was the problem. But then in realizing I was the problem, I also realized I was the solution. And being very addictive, very impulsive, and very obsessive, I kind of was like, right, I'm going to change my life. I was like, I'm going to change my name. I'm going to fucking move country. I'm going to be the next, I had visions of being like the next Catch Me If You Can, Leonardo DiCaprio. I was like, I'm going to be a con man traveling the world. Honestly, I should have admitted that because that's going to feed the narrative for the more negative side of things.
It gives that vibe, though. It does give that vibe.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and I did change my name really because my name's Lewis Taylor and my dad's name's Raymond. And my middle name is Raymond, but I changed it to Lewis Raymond Taylor because the moment I did that, it just felt different. It felt new. Lewis Taylor was like, Lewis Taylor did his list last night. Lewis Taylor's in the paper. Lewis Taylor's coming in. I always felt, that name was so associated with everything bad that I did. The moment I changed my name, I had a fresh identity, and it really changed from there. And also, there's all crazy stuff around numerology and stuff like that, which you can look into as well. Which some people do believe that, names, words, numbers, and things can align and change certain things, but not necessarily into that. That could have been a dynamic. Anyway, I changed my name, I changed my identity, and I made a decision, and I just kept on putting one foot in front of the next, and I fucking blinked, and life just spiraled into control. I always used to say life spiraled out of control. I kept thinking landing back in prison or landing back in jail, thinking, fucking hell, how have I ended back in here? But then when I started doing the right things, moving in the right direction, I noticed that my life very, very quickly became better. And it was literally blink. And I'm like, what the fuck? I was in prison not so long ago, and now I'm traveling the world, and fucking hell, now I'm a millionaire. And Jesus, now I'm actually becoming like almost famous. What the, and it's amazing what you can do. And it's as cliche as it sounds, when you adopt the right mindset. If your mind's fucked, then so's your life. If your mind is great, then so will your life. And having that shift, luckily I was at such a rock bottom moment. I had access to all these rehab programs, psychotherapy, psychiatry, counseling. I did a lot of drug and alcohol meetings. I immersed myself in personal development in Bali for years, water purification ceremonies, ceremonies in the jungle, doing plant medicine and breathwork sessions and cacao ceremonies. Everything. Give me everything. And I got obsessed with that and it turned me into a whole new person.
Right, I just have to skip back a little bit because I didn't want to interrupt you earlier. There's two things here, and it's both your parents. So your dad, you had a troubled relationship with,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
But you've just included him into your name.
Yeah, that is weird. I've actually thought that's weird. But it's my middle name as well. So my name is Lewis Raymond Taylor, but no one ever uses their middle name. So that was the main reason for it. But it is weird. And there is association with. There is something weird there that's subconscious. Do you know what's really weird? It was recently I found this out, but I was having a coaching session, and we both at the same time went. It was that much of a breakthrough, crazy moment. So, bearing in mind, I punched this guy in the taxi queue, right?
Yep.
I remember this time when I was about 7 years old, 7, 8, 9 years old. I opened up my dad's computer and started looking around. What's he looking at? And I'd seen that he'd written a police report of a guy that punched him in the nose in a taxi queue. And it really affected me. I don't know why, but I just felt like, oh my God, my dad, he's been hit, he's been hurt. And it really traumatized me. And I forgot about it completely. And it was only in that session where I was like, oh yeah, and I remember this one time and I was reading and then we both went, because we realized that obviously I went and then, punched the guy in a taxi queue. It's just like, there are sometimes these loops that you can subconsciously play that you don't even know you're playing. And maybe I put my dad's name in there out of memory or out of identification or out of spite. Who the fuck knows why I did it? Yeah. Maybe I'm like, hey dad, you thought I'd never amount to anything? Well, now I am you, 2/3 of my name is you. And look at me now. Fucker, so who knows?
It could be a fuck you.
Oh, mate, there's definitely a fuck you in there. I once had a poster that was, sometimes I feel like giving up, and then I remember there's a lot of motherfuckers that I've got to prove wrong. I'd love to be able to meet my dad now and say, what you got to say now? Way more successful than he ever was. But part of me is more mature and humble to the fact where I don't think I would be like that. I would actually sit down and say, hang on a minute, why was we like that? Why did that have to happen? And actually, you were wrong, but that's okay. I understand, And because he had a bad relationship with his dad, he hated his dad, and I don't know what's wrong. He had his mum died when he was 16. My dad was an alcoholic. He had just as much trauma, if not more, than me. Fuck knows what he got up to. Never found out. Never told me anything about his past, apart from those things that I kind of learned about. So I don't blame him. I guess I probably do on some level, but I would like to think that I wouldn't blame him, and I could have a good conversation with him and kind of just sort of understand more.
Can I now ask? So your mum obviously is in the documentary, and I think there'll be a lot of mums out there, or people, more mums probably, who won't necessarily agree with all of your mum's choices. Like
of course,
we've got to cut we've got to cut this guy off. Like I think if I
don't think that was my mum's. To be fair, I think that was my dad's decision that my mum would just do because my dad probably was actually a psycho as well, to be honest. And actually, I think my mum as well. It was my dad's decision to ring fence me, and I think my mum just sort of went along with anything my dad would say. But anyway, there'll be a lot of people that won't agree with that.
Well, the question was, how is your relationship with your mum now?
Yeah, interesting. It's okay now. I mean, we're different people. We don't talk often. Once every few months, we'll check in on the phone. She looked after my newborn the other day when we was at the premiere. And we do get on. Similar personality types.
Yep.
But she's obviously an older lady and I'm a younger guy. So there's not much in common to the point where we're going to be seeing each other a lot. See, that even says quite a lot, doesn't it, really? Because that's not the normal reason you would meet your family, is it? For me, I'm just like, there's not really much to talk and connect. And
that was an odd statement, because everyone's mum's an odd statement and everyone they're a younger person.
Yeah, true. For me, there has to be a direct ROI, return on investment there, or it's just a waste of time. Yeah.
There's skills, isn't it? There's those skills that you've got.
I would not be talking to you unless you had a podcast.
Fair. Fair. I mean,
but look, I bet you can also admit to doing the same thing yourself, but maybe you wouldn't admit it. But I mean, we all want to better our lives. We all want to leverage things. We all want to move forward. We all want to live a better life and feel better about ourselves. And we've got to make those choices. And sometimes they won't always benefit other people.
No.
I think that's a bit harsh for what I said about my mum. I don't think that's entirely true. Of course, I like spending time with my mum, but I'm not the sort of person that would be spending 3 days a week just to have cups of tea. Because we haven't had that nurturing relationship throughout our lives. So it's not just going to come out of nowhere. But at the same time, when we do spend time with each other, it's cool. I like spending time with her, and it's just short-lived because there's only so much we can talk about, and then, off for another couple of months, and that's all good.
But now you have another lady in your life, don't you? You have a wife now. And I think your wife was very interesting when she's like, yeah, he does have some psychopathic tendencies. I don't know if he is one or not, but don't really know. I thought she was brilliant, actually. But I've got one fairly deep, interesting question there. Okay, so a little pre-warn. So all of these emotions that you sort of lack, maybe, or psychopaths lack, it's much lower. What about the emotion?
I know you're going to say.
What makes you choose your wife? Or do you choose it for an ROI? Do you choose it because there is love there? Because when I was with my ex, who I'd said, I had issues with, I thought he'll never love anyone. He'll never be able to physically love anybody. So I know that's a tricky question. Sorry.
Yeah. I actually thought it'd be worse. I thought you'd say something like, do you love her or something? And that'd be really hard to answer. No, I will answer that one, actually. I do love my wife. Even though psychopaths can't love. I'm on a spectrum, remember, so it's not like I'm looking Jeffrey Dahmer. But I definitely experience it in a different way. So for me, I don't know if you've read the 5 love languages before. Some people receive love through words of affirmation. You tell them I love them. Some people have to have quality time. Some people need physical touch, so they need to be touched and fucked, basically. Some people need presence, like they actually need to be given things. That's actually a love form for them. And some people need acts of service. They need things doing for them. And I don't I genuinely actually do not feel love. That's the truth. I don't receive love. I can't sense that. I can't even comprehend what the fuck that would be like. That just seems, that sounds like, you know, you have some, I can imagine you get some warm, fuzzy feeling when you're in love with someone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have no fucking clue what that is.
Gosh.
Right. See, well, you won't know why I'm confused, but that's very confusing. Yeah, I mean,
what I get is I get a connection, but it's more of a logical, you know, I like this person and I'm compatible with this person. And it's also, I know that this person loves me because they do these things for me. So it sounds really chauvinistic, but it's not. But like if, for my wife making me like a dinner, for example, that to me is, you love me because you want to feed me and you want to look after me. Like, do you see what I mean?
So like my ex, it's unbelievable this.
But this might have just been his way of wanting to receive love from you, and you not understanding that's how he received it.
He would like write lists of like, you know, this is what I sort of expect of you, and this is how you love me. He didn't say it in those words, but he pretty much said it. I knew that that's what it meant, and so I guess there become times then when I feel sad for his situation and sad for his lack of emotions, and then I want to do them for him because I feel sad. So I'm going to make him feel, you know, it would be leveled up. The amount of effort that I put into that dinner would have been weighed up.
But the difference between me is I'm also a very nice guy. So, for example, I give my wife everything. Every 5 love languages, whether she wants them or not, she gets all 5. You know, because I logically know it. Different. So whether or not I would truly express myself or want to in that way, I will give it anyway because I understand it and I know how to do it. So she gets everything she needs. There's a little disconnect emotionally, obviously, because of everything we're talking about. So there's probably a little bit of warmth that she doesn't quite get that she's missing. But for the large part, I do everything I can to overcompensate in all the other areas that make her very, very aware that I love her. Because I do love her, but it's just in a different way.
The fact that you're able to actually say that and do that and sort of go, well, I do lack in this area and I do lack in this area, and that's probably more fucking honest than the majority of other people having bullshit relationships out there who are telling lies.
Did it impact you, or does it impact you having your child now? Because obviously she was your number one and, you know, the person in your life, but now you have a baby that you know she has a very, very strong bond with. Does that affect you at all, or does that not really like?
It's interesting actually. It does a little bit. We did actually have a conversation about it. I definitely noticed a less attention on me, which I didn't like. It's not like I was like, give me more attention, but I was like, I am noticing that I am no longer as important as I was before, which is, you know, something which I value: importance and power and significance and all these things. It's why I'm in the business I am. You know, I like that. I want to be on stage. I want to be seen. I want to change people's lives because it makes me feel good about myself. That's the truth, you know. Obviously, I like to help people, and it's great that that's what I'm doing. But I also do it for me. It's not a completely selfless reason. But yeah, there was a notice that I did notice that I'm not as needed as I was before, and I'm not as important, and I'm not getting as much attention as I did before. And it was, but I'm a good communicator, so I bring things like that up. I say, oh hey, I'm actually feeling a little bit less, you know, not getting as much attention as I did before, and then you have a conversation around it. So I think communication is the key, and I mentioned in the documentary, therapy, psychiatry, psychotherapy, coaching, counselling, mentoring. It's all talking. The more we talk, the more we communicate, the more we share these things openly and honestly, transparently, vulnerably, as raw as we can, as honest as we can, the more people are going to understand themselves, their relationships, and the happier we're all going to be. But until we do that, it's just going to be this mask that we're all playing, and that doesn't fucking help anybody.
I actually really agree with you so much on that, like so much. And I think because of your sort of admittance to this psychopathy almost gives you a freedom to be able to go, well, I can't feel that. Sorry, I can't. I'll try my best to make you feel better about it, but I can't feel it. And there's nothing I can do about that because you can't do anything about it. So actually it makes me a hell of a lot more empathetic, actually, for your situation, for other people who are in that situation. But I found that when I was
because I want it as well. That's the thing. I mean, actually, I wouldn't want a lot of it. Like, I do look at people that are riddled with fear and self doubt, and I think, thank fuck, I'm not like that, because that seems awful.
crippling for some people.
Oh God, awful. But of course, I would love to feel loved and receive love, and also I don't really get much joy or happiness or fulfillment, really, to be honest. It's quite flat. It's flat or stimulated. It's pretty much, that's my range. It's angry, flat, or stimulated. Those are the core. And I get a bit of a buzz. That's kind of the closest thing I'll get to happiness. So the day before the premiere, it's a big success. There's no warmth. I've made it. I'm successful. I've just had a strong coffee and I'm feeling fucking good. I'm feeling powerful and strong. That's kind of my range. And that's why I chase business, and that's why I work so hard in my business, because it gives me what I need and all I have access to, really.
Yeah, you've kind of harnessed a lot of these traits and things and made an incredible business, and obviously you're super successful, and you've got your business partner and the business, and you're going off in different streams and things like that. What if that just plateaued, or I guess it's probably not an option for you, but what if you lost everything, or what if something happened to that? Like, do you think that you could then regress to how you were before, or do you think you would?
I think that's a two-pronged question. First of all, I just would do it. If I lost it, I'd get it again. Very confident in that. When you got the mind to achieve it, you can get it. It's as simple as that. If I've done it once, I did it twice. So that's no problem. Doesn't scare me at all. Don't have a problem with losing it. I risk everything every day. Put everything on the line, and I'm okay with that. But in terms of do I worry about regressing? Do I worry about it? I don't know if I worry about it, but is there a possibility of it? Yeah, there is, especially with drinking the drugs. Like, I've had a few relapses over the years, not like big ones, but ones where I've thought, it's been 5 years now, maybe I could have a drink, and then it's like a couple months later, I'm like, fucking hell, I'm drinking way too much and shit. I've said a few things that I wouldn't usually say, and I'm noticing the old me there a little bit more than I'd like. So the drugs and the alcohol is my gateway to accessing the old me, for sure, and that is my biggest thing that I've got to be careful of, because if I split up with Diana and I lost that sort of like loving, supportive guardian in a sense, and I started taking more drink and drugs, and for some reason I became a little bit more angry about something, I could fall back. So I could fall back. So that's why I've just got to constantly work on myself. There is, like I said, there is no cure. I've got to constantly work on myself. I've got to constantly be understanding myself, giving me enough to fill me up to the point where I don't need to fill it with other things, fill it with business, fill it with helping people, fill it with impact, so that I don't need to fill it with external substances like drink or drugs or violence in order just to make myself feel powerful. And as long as I keep on doing what I'm doing now, then I've got less chance of obviously regressing.
I was just going to look to the future, really, and just say, obviously, with the business and everything, what you said something at the end of the documentary, which is really interesting. What it cuts off on. That was a real, I don't know, it kind of like
plot twist. Yeah. So it's different, and I'm already working on it, and I've already got a couple of things in the pipeline. So I moved quick. That documentary was recorded quite a while ago. I've already taken steps in that direction. So they'll have to watch it and find out. Oh, that'd be nice. There you go. That could be the new headline: Lewis Raymond Taylor, the psychopathic Bond. Cool. Well, I just wanted to obviously mention for anyone listening, if you've obviously been intrigued by what we're talking about today, then of course all you need to do is go to Netflix from Wednesday the 22nd, which should be around about the time that we release this podcast. And you can go to Netflix in UK and Ireland only, unfortunately, and watch it. And it will be soon to be released globally. But at the moment, it's only in the UK and Ireland. So, of course, type in the Psychopath Life Coach and check it out. And let me know what you think. And tag me on Instagram and all that fun stuff at Lewis Raymond Taylor. And let me know what you thought. But thank you for having me, guys. Appreciate it. It's been a good chat.
I've got one more thing to just say before we actually
Go for it.
So, you know, it gets spun a little bit in a different direction at the end of the documentary. I won't say what it is, but I think it'll be very interesting to sort of, I'm very interested to see the response that you get from this. I mean, you've already said, you know, you're going to get, you think that you're going to get a whipping. I don't know.
Well, it's polarizing, isn't it? There's going to be people that go, "Oh my god, he's such a traumatized little kid. I love him," you know. And there's going to be people that go, "What a fucking horrible, manipulative little con man." And there's going to be everything in between. So we'll find out.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to watch, and I can't wait. But thank you so much. This has been a really interesting chat to have. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
We see you soon.